Going live. Hello, everyone. This is Juliana. Friday nights. I am loving, enjoying these Friday nights with you guys. Thank you to everyone who joins in. I think the more interesting and more fulfilling for me. I hope you're all having the same experience. Tonight, I am talking with a new friend, and I am just very excited about the topic and the person. We're talking about leadership tonight. Leadership is this nebulous thing to a lot of us. It's something we strive after, but maybe we never use that term to define ourselves. And some of us feel like it is necessary to take on a leadership role and have the title, or we don't achieve our worth. And I just wanted to say, I think we're all leaders. I think we all have the capacity to be leaders. There isn't one type of leader. I think we all have we all have our own unique genius zone. And I just want us all to embrace it and open our eyes for each other so that we can see each other's genius zones, so that we can learn from each other and really become this amazing, interesting matrix of capability. And instead, I think so many of us will sit contemplating, wondering, and trying to decide when to pull the trigger, when to move, when to step in, when to lead, and when will our moment come. And I think that in this moment, I'm sitting with you, and this is the moment. This is the moment. Today, maybe I'll be a leader, maybe I'll be a follower. But if I bring myself fully, I truly believe that is all we're meant to do. And the rest kind of falls into place. So even though leadership is this incredible thing that we spend, companies spend billions of dollars training, promoting, nurturing their leaders, finding their leaders, creating succession plans and such. And even though there are people who have, they're senior at their craft and they're amazing at it, but they want to get into people leadership because that's the hierarchy. I just want to shed that all. And I want to talk about what it feels like to be a leader. What is leadership, truly? And I think it's really just about people. On that note, again, I want to thank you everyone for tuning in. The topic today is leaning into leadership, and I'm going to introduce our guest tonight. I want to thank. I've got a couple of comments so far. I'm just going to say hello, Salim. Thank you so much for the wow. Happy to have you here with us. And please send in your comments. This is a live show. We are happy to answer your questions. Take your comments and comments. Let us know what you're thinking. And who's this one here? Love your lipstick. Well, thank you very much. I'll take it. All right. So let's dive in, and I'm going to welcome Jenn Lofgren. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited about our conversation.
Me too. And thank you for joining me. I know it is a Friday night and lots of people have lots to do, but I also know that with lockdowns and COVID, some of us are bored and needing some inspiration, some distraction, something other than Netflix marathon. And so why not real conversations? So thank you so much for making this happen.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So Jenn, tell me about you. Like I'm just gonna give a little bit of context here. I reached out to you on LinkedIn. I think originally it was for a connection, and then I sent you a message saying, hey, your profile's pretty interesting. Let's maybe chat and see if there's something that we can do together. But at a first glance, you do executive and leadership coaching. You have been named one of Canada's top 100 most powerful women. And that's something, I don't even know what that means, but that says something, So, impressive, interesting. And then we talked and we connected. And I loved your vulnerability and your openness. And I'm glad you're here with me tonight. So that's what somebody will see when they first go to your LinkedIn page. Tell me a little bit about your passions, what your purpose is, what you want to do.
Oh, I think my biggest purpose is really being a catalyst for other people to get things that they really want, that they can't even really articulate yet. It's, I know I want something, but I don't really know what it is. And my purpose in life is to help other people figure that out and make it happen for themselves. Not to be the one that makes it happen for them, but to really help them find their own path forward and make it happen. And it shows up in my professional life. Yet when I look at my personal life, it shows up over and over again too. It's something that I don't realize I do half the time, but that's one of my superpowers, and it's also the thing that's most fulfilling for me. And, you know, a lot of people have story about who I am because of all these amazing things that I think about. Wow, they're talking about me.
Yeah.
Because I feel like sometimes I'm talking about somebody else and being the, you know, I'll just list some of the things that are things people see, being the principal and founder of a really well-respected executive and leadership development company, a recipient of an alumni award from my university, or the Women's Executive Network Top 100 Most Powerful Women Award, and an Authentic Leadership Award from the Universal Women's Network, and writing for Forbes, and being on some of the amazing boards that I get to serve on. But that's not me. Those are some of the things that I do and some of the things I've achieved. Who I am, I've got a way more complex story. I had a hard experience when I was a young person and was independent very young, and you don't see that in the story or the LinkedIn profile, or you don't see that I learned to ski when my daughter learned to ski and I was terrified and crying on the ski hill after my first Black Diamond run, and swearing at my poor husband because he took me down this run that he believed in me and I could do it, but that it was so scary, or that I'm a genuine friend and able to be present with people. I think all those things are who I am.
I love that. I think there is an internal push, something, you know, where we feel like we should be something. I need to do this. I have to do that. And when we embrace who we truly are, which is oddly way more difficult than it sounds, that's actually where the rest of the stuff lands. It falls into place. You know, they say, there's the saying, you know, do what you love and the money will follow. And I think that concept is very true about a lot of things, about success. You know, don't necessarily try a lot a listen to people's advice, right? Listen to people's advice.
I've tried a lot of things.
Yeah. I believe you, because I'm similar. And you know, it's so funny when people, I do career coaching, and when people ask me, you know, how do I answer the question, why do I have 3 jobs in 5 years or something? And I say, okay, well, tell me why. And they explain to me, and it makes so much sense. And in fact, I respect them for it. And I've answered that question so many times about myself, because I want to do meaningful work, and I take on ridiculous challenges, which means I'm going to also have interesting failures, which really are just, you know, I learned more here than I did there kind of thing. But yeah, it's like if we stop performing, we actually find our destination a little bit sooner than we might otherwise, which is really interesting. I did a little bit of, sorry, do you have a thought? I see some thinking going on there.
I think you mentioned you stopped performing, and I don't think it's a one and done. I don't know about you, but I know that it's a lifelong journey, and I catch myself in that hustle to impress and wanting to be liked is a vice for me at times, and I lose my way and then notice, oh, okay, now what do I want to do with that?
That's totally fair. That's absolutely fair. And I think that is true. I think we do hit different stages in terms of letting go of certain limiting beliefs. So I think maybe I'm just at a new step in my life that way. I most certainly will not do work that doesn't align with my values. I won't stay in a hostile work environment or in a ruthless work environment where we're not mission driven. I have no problem, zero problem with people being emotional and sometimes difficult because of how driven they are and that they're struggling with something in that moment. And this is our shared goal. So, and I'm having a hard time with where we are at this moment. I have no problem with that. I really do have a problem with conflict without the vulnerability to have the conversation. So you can never move forward because it's not actually what it's real. Like, it's not about what everyone's saying it's about. I can't do anything with that. Right. And so I have no interest in that. So I think I've let go of some things in the past, but I have to admit that, my passion is communications. And I firmly believe that we think we communicate when we put words out there, but true communications involves a sender, a receiver, filters, multiple layers of filters, a message, a goal. And so, yes, I do perform in some ways, absolutely, because I try to choose messages that are going to be effective in that moment with that person or that group, whatever the case may be. And lo and behold, as I get older, there are some performances I will no longer do. I don't do that play anymore.
Well, and I want people watching and listening to know that although you may have let it go, do not beat yourself up when you go back to one of those familiar patterns and you notice it, because those are ingrained long-term patterns. And although you've let it go in day-to-day, then there's some new situation where you haven't practiced letting that go, but you're now more aware, and then you go, oh, there it is. How fascinating. Yeah. And then you're in a place of choice to do what you want with it.
I love that. I think it's so critical to observe life with curiosity and appreciation. I heard that in a class once. It was one of the instructors, and she was a medical doctor as well. It was a class on mindfulness, and that was one of her go-to lines: observe with curiosity and appreciation. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to hold on to that for the rest of my life. I'll tell you a little bit of a story about while I was taking that class. I was invited to speak at a conference sort of last minute. It happened. It was in San Francisco. I had a newborn. I had never traveled alone, never left my son. And it was about a week away. And I thought, you know what am I going to do here? I really want to go. So I went, and I got there at 4 a.m. I was supposed to be at the conference at 8. And so I went to my room. I tried to lay down a little bit, was wired. In the elevator down to the lobby, knowing that I have to go out into San Francisco and find this conference center, I start having a panic attack. And I just thought of my teacher, and I thought, okay, observe with curiosity and appreciation. And I literally started saying, I was alone in the elevator, and I literally started saying, isn't it interesting that I can't breathe right now? Now, isn't it interesting that my knees feel weak? And as I said every one of those pieces, it literally faded away, and the elevator doors opened, and my panic attack was gone.
Wow.
Blew my mind. So when I got back to class, I had to tell all my classmates. They were very proud of me, but I'll never forget that lesson, because it just validated for me that the more you fight something, if it's there, it needs some kind of expression. You absolutely choose the healthy expression, but if it's there, you need to let it out. So just stop fighting,
If you don't let it out, you'll act it out.
Yes, it's true. Okay, so that leads to something that I was thinking about earlier. We're in a very interesting time. We talk about diversity and inclusion in like every topic, every conversation that we have. This is a hot topic. This is something people care about, feel very attached to, and as women, we are at an interesting stage where it's not odd to be a woman leader. It might still be something that we're framing, we're developing as a culture, but it's not brand new barrier breaking stuff. And then when I was thinking about leadership in light of this conversation, I was thinking about some of the great leaders of our time. And then I started Googling, and I found this interesting article. So here are two examples of leadership that I think are potentially examples of what you just said. So first one is Steve Jobs. I'm going to read a little excerpt. There are countless examples of Steve Jobs' dismissive, arrogant, and condescending behavior, due in part to his attitude of not caring what other people think. He would ask flabbergasting questions in interviews to intentionally put prospective employees under stress. He would fire people without warning and had a zero tolerance policy for mistakes and failure. The second is Jeff Bezos. The culture Jeff Bezos has created at Amazon has been described by a human resources director as purposeful Darwinism, a ruthless policy that demands high performance lest you face serious consequences. And while we are at a time where the paradigm is shifting, I can't help but wonder, what does leadership look like today? What should leadership look like today? Because we have a very strong historical version, just the paradigm before us of leadership that is polarizing and firm and sometimes fearful, hostile. And so, is that, I wonder if that's an example of what you were just saying, that if you don't express it, you'll act it out. Or if there's something necessary about being that firm, that polarizing in leadership. Weird question, but that's my question.
I think those leaders get great short-term results, but they're always needed to be there because it's not sustainable without them there to continue to have their finger on the pulse or to thumb on the tack, to continue to push for the results. And when those leaders go, often those organizations start to fall apart or have serious impact because they didn't grow and develop the people, the business, the processes to take on the vision or the development that they were there and needed to push the people or the business forward with. So I think today effective leadership is a blend of, it's not just all people. It's also got to be towards pursuing a purpose or a vision and those strategic priorities. And there are things to be done and to achieve, but to bring people along and help them see and buy into and see what you can see as a leader and bring them along in their thinking, and that they see what's in it for them, and what gets you excited about it might not be the same as them, but they can find why they want to contribute to that and what's meaningful for them about that outcome. At the same time, it's important for a relational leader to be both empathetic and boundaried, to have those hard conversations, to not mince words, to be, as Brené Brown says, to be clear and kind. Clear is kind, unclear is not kind. So, but you can do so with empathy. Not talk all the way around an issue or avoid a tough conversation because you care about the person or you don't want to hurt their feelings. It's not helping anybody. Leadership is about showing up and stepping into hard moments with courage. I talk to leaders a lot about, if you don't feel like you're going to vomit once a week or maybe even every day, you maybe aren't doing your job. And that's stepping into a lot of that ambiguity and unknown and looking at creating some sustainability around you so that the organization, it doesn't need you, that it actually grows and surpasses you. And that's the most vulnerable thing we do as leaders is, well, what if I'm not needed anymore? That's scary because we don't know what's next for us in our own journey. But that's what you're trying to create, is an organization and people that don't need you and surpass you. That's the servant side of leadership.
There's a lot of brilliance there. And while you were talking, especially at the beginning there, I saw something that I hadn't ever thought of in that old paradigm of leadership. That is, it's like that a parenting approach. And you have the parents that I'm not talking about the extreme where a parent is, wants to be considered a best friend and has no rules or anything like that, but rather you have the parent that is very strict, runs the house with very clear expectations, with very little wiggle room and understanding. And then you have the parent that asks their child, what is it that you want? Oh, cool, you want that? Great. How are you going to achieve that? Okay, cool. Figure it out. Let me know how it turns out. And you'd think that the one who's being more instructive, firmer, scarier sometimes, is doing more of that teaching. But it ends up being the ones who often let go and let their loved ones fail, that end up producing these young adults that can stand alone. And I hadn't ever thought about that in terms of corporate leadership. But that's suddenly what that sounds like.
I agree, and I'll often use examples around parenting. For example, being there and soft heart with your child on having a tough conversation, but having the tough conversation and being really clear about something that's not okay. And I see this in organizations too. This idea of, if you're really strict and you oversee everything, you're not developing the critical thinking of that team member or of the organization, and the organization relies on you for the systems and processes and to do those checks. When that young adult leaves home, they don't know how to do that thinking because you've always done it for them. And then they're having to learn it when the stakes are much higher. The parent that gives a little bit more of that leeway, and they have failures along the way earlier in life, the stakes are lower, so they're able to figure it out in a safe environment. It's still hard, still painful.
Yeah.
But the stakes are really low when you're 8, 10, 12, and you don't hand in your homework, than when you're 26 and you don't hit a deadline and you lose your job.
Or you don't renew your license sticker or something and you end up getting arrested, and
or you get a $500 ticket because you don't have the sticker and you can't afford it. And it's going to have just a material impact on your well-being.
Yes, and we can have prohibitive consequences that are, not life-ending, but still prohibitive. But I think that is a hard reality life will teach you, but we think it's actually cruel to teach each other sometimes, whether you're a leader, a parent, really in any leadership type role. And I use the word, I did air quotes there, because I think leadership comes in many forms, and you could easily have a leader amongst you and you don't even necessarily see that person that way, but they are setting the tone and they are inspiring you and they're driving you and they're doing it with such humility you don't even realize you're following. Yeah.
The best leaders, it's not about them. It's about, you don't see that they're bringing up the best in you. And that's really the magic they're creating. I'll give you one other example of parenting, is those parents that will spoil their kids and give them anything they ask for. You rob your child of the opportunity to hope and wish. When you give a team member all the answers to the problems, you rob them of their opportunity to struggle so that they can learn and they can come up with their own vision and, again, their own wish, and being able to drive something forward themselves.
So what do you think of a scenario where there is a leader, sees a young person, young professional who has a great deal of potential, doesn't have all the answers. The leader has the answers, chooses not to give it to that person because he thinks or she thinks that this employee can rise to the challenge. If that person doesn't rise to the challenge, if as a leader you try really hard not to constantly succumb to the temptation of being in control, but you come across an employee, or maybe more than one, a few employees that don't rise to the challenge, what advice do you have in that scenario?
I think it comes back to figuring out, what did they want? And as the leader or the boss, you might have a vision of what you want for that team member.
Mm-hmm.
And although it seems logical or obvious that they would want that, have you stopped to check in with them and what they want
Mm-hmm.
and what they aspire to? And maybe they don't even know it yet. And that could be one of the most meaningful things that you do for that person, is
Mm-hmm.
have that conversation with them of what do they want? Where do they go? And creating permission for them. Often young professionals, they don't know what they want yet. But it's also scary to say what they might want, and giving them permission to explore and say, I might want this, I'm not sure yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Instead, they're holding the expectation that if I declare what I want, then that's my only path. And giving them permission to explore, well, what are some of the things you think you might want?
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay to have things that you might want until you get clarity, you get closer to knowing what you do want. And do we ever really know 100%?
Mm-hmm.
I say probably not, because there's learning that goes through the journey towards getting closer to what we want. And often our goals, we were talking about goals before we went live, our goals, they fine tune and change as we get closer to them. They're rarely exactly what we set out to go achieve, yet we need a goal so that we have a course and we're going in a forward momentum direction. But the goals change over time. And so back to your question of what do you do with that team member? I probably need to help myself figure out what they want, and potentially helping them figure out what they want, so that we can align whatever we're working on with what they want. Or maybe we need to change what we're working on to get them closer to it. And maybe they're just in the wrong fit role because it's not really what they want. And how do we help them get on that trajectory? I remember, and I didn't mention earlier, I had an 11-year career in information technology. And I worked in an organization where there was a fellow that was really gifted in his work, but had a career development conversation with his leader. I said, when they got talking about what do you want one day? Again, that permission, one day. He says, well, secretly, I really want to open a coffee shop. But you know what they did? Such an amazing organization and leader is they worked with that individual on their transition plan. And that's exactly what they did. They put together their business plan, and over a couple of years, got the plans in place to open their cafe, and then transitioned from one role into the next and left the organization. And that was one of the biggest gifts that organization could give them, is being open about their career path and it being okay. Not that you're leaving us and so then you're a bad person. Okay, so how do we make your experience here rich and rewarding for you and the organization while you're here, but also making an opportunity to get you closer to what you want most?
I love that you used that example, because I think as much as it is uncomfortable to have certain conversations around performance and job descriptions and such, the conversation almost everyone dreads is, this isn't a fit. And yet sometimes that conversation is compassionate. It is the gift. And I remember one leader telling me about a young man who was hired into a role. She was the CEO of the organization, and there was a young man hired into a role in the company. And on paper, he was a perfect fit. It didn't align with the way he operated. Like, he could get it. He could talk about it at a very high level, smart level. He could talk about strategy, but it's just not the way he operated. He's more relational and that sort of thing. And when there were performance issues, they talked about it. And ultimately, she said to him, I have the utmost respect for you and for your talents. And I have to tell you, this role is not for you. And he walked away, tail between his legs, not feeling great at all, feeling very, very hurt, rejected. And a few months later came back to thank her in person for setting him free. And that's the thing we don't really want to talk about. That, in Canada, I don't think this is the case in the US, but in Canada, there's constructive dismissal, that an organization can effectively dismiss you by demoting you internally, trying to take away responsibilities, humiliating you professionally. But to your point, I think if we can have honest conversations It's not constructive dismissal. It's what do you want to do next? How can I help you get there? And how can we make it somewhat mutually beneficial as we get there, as we make that transition, which is, I think, a pretty uncommon conversation. What would you say?
It's an uncommon conversation. It's awkward, it's hard, it's ambiguous, and it's creating a lot of safety in the relationship. And as the leader, know that it might not be received right away, because my experience previously with other leaders has been that it's not okay to be honest with what I want. So it takes time to build that relationship and build that trust so that you can create something that's mutually beneficial. And, you know, you were talking at the beginning that not everybody listening is in a titled leadership role, but having more hard conversations and stepping into the vulnerability of those difficult conversations. Maybe you're that professional that's struggling and opening up that difficult conversation. Is you stepping up as the leader in that moment and opening up something that's awkward and difficult for your leader to have the conversation with you, and creating permission for them to have the conversation with you because you initiated it.
It's interesting. Earlier in my career, I remember this one company. I love startups. I love startups that I get the instinct, I have the feeling that they have like really, really aggressive growth potential. And I want to help them not just grow a bit. I want to help them, you know, catapult. And as a result of that, I have a lot of roles where I didn't stay very long because it was, you know, a 3-month contract, and then they were struggling to catch up with the delivery, or 3 years tends to be sort of the average high end of that. And I remember this one organization I went to work with, and they spoke their values. They had them on the wall, and it was all, you know, forget hierarchy, open door. We're all here for each other. We're a team. And I'm a very literal person, like very, very literal. And I took that for what I thought it meant. Literally, you can walk in my door and you can tell me things that you think, and you don't need to worry about if I'm going to be mad at you and then take it out on you because I disagree. Well, I learned that lesson the hard way. And the door was not open. It was figuratively open. It was not practically open. I got in a lot of trouble in that role, and I did help them grow. We went from, I think I was their 8th employee or 7th employee. In the short period I was there, we did some really incredible things, got huge contracts. I was one of their main writers. And, you know, we did some really incredible things, some award-winning work. We 5 times the size of the company in revenue and employees. It was really great. But I remember posting a blog, and, you know, a couple of hours later, someone storms in and says to me, "What business did you have posting that? Take that down right now. Who do you think you are?" And that was literally my job description to do, and it wasn't a controversial topic as far as I was concerned. What do you do with the fact that, well, here's maybe a question. If you are right, if your strategy is bang on, if your expertise is intact, if you have the most ideal path, if you are good, your intentions are on the mark and all of that, are you insulated from people taking you down, from the critics?
No. No, there's always going to be critics. There's always going to be judgment. And that's part of the vulnerability of leadership, or vulnerability of sticking your neck out and stepping into courage, is there's going to be critics, and to expect them, not be surprised by them, know that they're there. And you get to decide which voices you listen to, and which seats in an arena. If you're in an arena and you're in the center and you're going for the good fight, are you listening to the hecklers, or are you listening to the support section of the people that care about you, and they're your they're your loving critics. They're the people that are going to cheer you on, but when you're screwing up, they're going to be straight with you and they're going to tell you, you're screwing up and you need to clean up. But they're doing it because they care about you, not because they want to see you fail, because they want to see you succeed. Know that there's always going to be critics, and we can get into our heads and second guessing ourselves and think we're doing the wrong thing because they're critics. No, they will never go away. You get to choose what you do with the critics. And sometimes the strategy is to shut them out. Other times it's actually to invite them in. That person that stormed into your office could have been a response that would have drew them in would be, tell me what's going on for you. Tell me more about what's happening. What's important about that? Okay, help me understand. And drawing them in to now they've come closer, and people are hard to hate up close. You wanted to understand them. In turn, they may or may not want to understand you. They might soften and put some of the fight down and be a little bit more constructive in their conversation with you. And there's no guarantees. There's never guarantees.
Yeah, I think that I believe you and I agree with you. And if someone asked me that question, you know, like if you're right, if you're good, are you insulated? I would probably answer in some similar way. But the truth is, we have an instinct, and I don't think it's just me, that when someone criticizes you, you immediately think, I'm wrong, I'm bad, I failed. How do you know, as a leader in any capacity, how do you know when you're on the right path? How do you know to push forward?
You never really know. That's the hardest part, is accepting that you don't know, and you make the best decision with what you have right now. And I like to say there's no bad decisions, there's just next decisions. And what's important is that you're making a decision and you're taking a next step. And it can sound a bit flippant or like a Hallmark greeting card. And, oh, there's no bad decisions, just next decisions. But let me unpack that a little bit. Sometimes decisions you make, you can't know if they're right or wrong until after you've made them.
Yes.
And that's where the learning is.
Yeah.
Sorry?
In fact, no one could know. It's not like there's someone else beside you who could have told you this is going to happen. Sometimes you just need to test.
And sometimes you won't know for months or years if you made the right decision. But not making a decision and delaying it too long means that the universe, some circumstances will make a choice for you, and it might not be the one that you want. So part of leadership is being willing to take the uncertain decision, informed as best you can, and then go for the sake of creating an opportunity for a next decision on the other side.
I really appreciate that. I agree with you. And I think that is I can very much relate to the way that you delivered that. And I also want to respect that there are other voices, other tones, and there are two examples that stand out in my mind of the same message that sounds completely different. Not completely different. It is the same message, but completely different tone. I've often heard the saying, money loves speed. And real leaders make decisions, you know, insinuating that you don't hum and haw about it and that sort of thing. And so there can be a more brass tacks kind of view of this, but ultimately comes down to you have to embrace failure. You can look at that failure however you want, but it needs to be part of the story, or you can't get all the answers.
You make me think of, you have to embrace failure, but not just for the sake of failure and being reckless. You make me think of you have to risk a no to get a yes. You have to risk failing to succeed. If you don't risk failing, you can't succeed because you never take the step.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. And I think we also need to distinguish, and this is something we don't talk about enough. Like, I think this should be taught in schools, but we ultimately think about the fact that at a base level, failure in nature means death, right? And so we have this instinct, and I'm sure we all have an experience where we have fought for something with a ridiculous amount of passion when it wasn't really that important. and it's more about not being told that direction is wrong, that decision is wrong, but rather feeling like you're being told you're no good, you're wrong, you're bad. I want to thank Andrea for her comment here. So, brilliant question, a thought. If the decision is in alignment with the overarching vision goal, that is a good quick check for knowing you did the right thing. I really appreciate that. What do you think about that, Jen?
Yeah, I agree. I like the alignment of the overarching vision or goal. If I'm going in that general direction, and I might not know it's the right answer, but it's aligned with my values or the direction I want to be going, even though it feels uncertain, it's still a considered decision, even if I can't be sure that it's the right one. And it's about testing the weather. And does it feel like, and it's soft, it's ooey gooey, because there isn't, can't quantify everything. And so some of that gut feeling has to come in with those considered decisions where you don't have all the information. And this is one way of a weather check of, well, it help the winds blow in the direction that I want to go. I've got enough evidence that tells me I think so, then make the decision, and then there'll be another one on the other side of you.
It's very interesting. Thank you so much, Andrea, for bringing that concept up. The fact that we have vision, we have goals, we have a mission, we have values. I'm a really good professional. I've practiced it a lot at doing the mission, vision, values stuff. Looking at what really brings a group together, and then aligning that to the way that they're presented in their brand and marketing wise. And a few weekends ago, I tried to use that expertise in my house because we have some rules, and my son completely disagreed with them. He did not believe that they were the right rules, that they targeted the right outcomes. And so I, not from a parenting expertise perspective, but from a mission, vision, values perspective, we spent our Saturday morning doing a mission, vision, values statement, creating that together. And the thing that surprised me the most was that my son's contributions and my husband's were almost verbatim.
Wow.
Right? Meanwhile, they're constantly, this is the rule, no, it's not, But when we broke it down, my son agrees in principle. And then we had to figure out, what does that look like? And I know that I don't remember off the top of my head. I want to get our mission, vision, values designed like you would in an office and put it up somewhere. But I do remember there's one word that came about that is included as a result of my son's contribution that wouldn't have been. And it's something about how, we believe a family plays, learns, and succeed together. And we wouldn't have included the word play. But the truth is, we believe in that too, right? We do believe in that. We believe family has fun together, connects together. This isn't a game of torture. We actually want to enjoy each other, right? And he helped shape that. But I just can't help but believe that if you don't like the direction of something, strip it back. Does it align with your values? Does it align with your vision? Does it get you there? And if it doesn't, the answer's kind of already there for you. You don't have to debate it out about who's right and who's wrong. It's just, how does this play out practically? So that comment really touched home for me. Thank you. Any thoughts? Like, you must be doing mission, vision, values work with leaders and leadership teams sometimes as well. Is that something that plays large in your practice, or not so much?
It does, but I find that you hit it head on. A lot of leaders really struggle. We do a lot in development planning and working on a leadership development plan and creating their own vision. And when you hit the vision head on, it's, oh, I don't know what I want my vision to be. Okay. Or it can turn into this very bland kind of, I could cookie cutter it and put it on any other leader's development plan. And same thing with the leadership team. What I like to do is this idea of tell me a story from the future or a postcard from the future. And let's imagine a picture of what do you want the future to be? And sometimes I'm using a photo from a website or a set of cards that have images on them to pick one as a metaphor. Now tell me a story about a year from now or 3 years from now. Jen, it's the best place that I could be at this point in my life. I never imagined I could be here. And let me tell you what's happening here. And I get them to write down 3 or 4, maybe 5 sentences to describe that. Just what would fit on the back of a postcard, like a postcard from the future. And we get that story. And then all of a sudden there's their vision.
Yes.
So we don't come at it head on. Because we don't think in those nice tidy bullet points. We think in story and in pictures. So that's often how I come at pulling out the vision first. When I've got a leader that's like, oh, I work hours on this.
Yes.
And I come to my session, or we came back to the next team session and we got nothing. And we pull it out in 10 minutes.
Yes. Yeah, that's awesome.
Struggling with that. I like to use the website unsplash.com. It's got beautiful images on it, royalty free, beautiful images. And I'll get someone to spend 10 minutes. You get 10 minutes max. Find an image that speaks to where you'd like to be, that represents how it feels, and then tell me a story about that. And you get 5 sentences maximum to give it. And it's amazing what comes out for people.
Oh, I really love that. I might steal that exercise one day. I want to ask you about the fact that we have, I think, 5 generations in the workforce right now. Different things speak to different people. I remember working at a place once where we grew very, very quickly, and I was a senior leader there, but I opted to give up my office in an effort to accommodate the growth. And there was sort of like a faction of the organization that really respected me for it. And there was another faction of the organization that felt it was their responsibility to take me under their wing and tell me how much I was jeopardizing any respect people had for me by giving up my office. And I kind of understood both sides, but I also couldn't understand how anyone would try and impose any of that on me. I did what I thought was best. How do you bridge that gap?
What's the gap that you're trying to bridge?
Well, the fact that they're bringing you clearly this organization, every organization, you might have named your mission and your vision incorrectly, your values incorrectly, but the fact is people are coming together because there's something shared there. You might not name it perfectly, but there's something real. And yet you have a culture, but you also have all these other cultures. You know, how do you bridge that?
You know, the first thing that comes to me is really understanding what's happening for the other person. What's important about me taking the office, and you sharing with them what's important to you about not taking the office, to come to some mutual understanding. You may learn something about what's important to them that may change how you feel about it. Or they may learn something in the process that change about you and what's important to you that changes how they feel about the office and its significance. And together you might find a solution in how to communicate around that everybody feels good about, and it ceases to become a thing. But that's what comes up for me, is really asking about the other person first, so that in turn they get curious of, well, you're asking all about me, and I don't understand why it's so important to you not to. Tell me about that. And now we can get to some mutual understanding. And then I don't know what the outcome would be. I do know that if you're trying to convince the other person, you'll lose. Nobody wants to be sold to. Nobody wants to be convinced. But influencing comes in 2 parts. One is understanding the other person. The other is telling a story, and a story about what the future and what you aspire to, and inquiring about the other person's story and what they want.
Andrea here really loves the postcard exercise, and I wanna call out the fact that there's that quote about how people will remember not what you say but how you make them feel, and that makes a lot of sense with your response there. The fact that we can understand the feeling behind it. I can understand why it's important to you, but if you never tell me why this or that is important to you, then it's not something I can relate to. So that's very interesting. It always comes back to communicating and listening, which is really cool.
Something you're passionate about.
Very much so. So when you and I first talked, you told me, and I don't remember how this came up, but you told me about this really amazing outside of the office walls leadership exercise, or not exercise, but example in your community. And I would just love if you could share that story with our viewers today.
I think it came up because it was just so real for me at the time, because it was just happening, or we were just on the other side of it. And what happened is in September, I saw a Facebook post in our community group, and a younger woman in our neighborhood was commenting on a fellow in the neighborhood that's been homeless in our neighborhood for 10 years. Everybody knows Richard. And she asked if anyone had seen him recently, and that she wanted to see if there was some way to possibly help him, but she hadn't seen him in a while. And if anybody's seen him, could you let me know? And I said, yeah, I'll let you know. And haven't seen him in a while, and if there's some way that I can help, I'd love to, and I don't know how. But 3 weeks later, I saw him, and I talked to him a little bit, and I went and I let Sabrina know through the Facebook group. And she said, yeah, we've seen him 3 days ago, and there's a few of us that are talking about exploring how we can help. Do you want to join the conversation? And I joined a conversation, and there was 5 of us, Sabrina, her sister, and myself, and 3 other women that I had never met. 2 other women I had never met. So there was 5 of us. And over the course of a week, we started talking about how we might be able to help in getting him into some housing, because he was what I learned a lot. They call it rough sleeping, and that's not just homeless, but sleeping outside in the elements. And how to get this person connected with some supports, but also really distrusting of the regular system. And one woman, she was working on getting him access to system in a way that might fit for him. And then another one was looking at some other supports. And then we continued to brainstorm, and we discovered that, oh, Richard has an income. Oh, well, that's interesting. Why doesn't he have housing? Oh, well, it's hard to get housing. Well, I'd be willing to look at some places with him. And we came together and we looked at how to get him potential viewings of places in our community. And at first, I got lots of no's. I probably got 40 no's from apartments. Nope, won't do it. And they'd screen him out. And couldn't even see a place with him. And then we came back together and brainstormed some more, and we found we came up with a strategy to reach out to individual landowners or landlords, because we were being screened out by company policies. So that's what we did, and we looked for basement suites. And I lined up 3 basement suites to go look at with Richard. And on Saturday, just mid-October, so this all started at the end of September, late October, went and looked at 3 places. And the first place we walked into, Richard and I, we talked to this fellow, the landlord, and I could just tell this was, if we're going to have a chance, this is our guy. And his name was Dan. And we were straight up with Dan about the situation, and he asked us to fill out an application, and we went to look at 2 others. And he sent me the application. I sat down and met with Richard for coffee the next day, and we went over the application, and I sent it in to Dan by email. And Monday morning, Dan said, be happy to rent to Richard.
Oh.
Here's a member of our community that everybody knows. And for whatever reason has been homeless in our community and chose to continue to be in our community for such a long period of time. And in a few short weeks, by showing some love and care and attention to this person, he went from being homeless to having an opportunity to be housed. But then we ran into a hurdle on Monday. He got approved and he could move in on Friday, but we needed a damage deposit. And although he had income, he had spent everything he had in his income because it was cold and staying in a motel.
Yeah.
And had no money left or not enough left to make the damage deposit. So we reached out back to the same Facebook group and said, here's what we've been through in the last couple of weeks, and you all know him. Would you consider helping and making a small donation to help us make this possible? And from Tuesday night to Wednesday, we raised so much money we had to tell people to stop and remove the posting. Then we didn't have enough money to buy furnishings, all the furnishings he needed, so we came up with a list. We went back to the Facebook group on Wednesday and said, here's the furnishings or the things he'll need for his home. And from Wednesday to Thursday, we had everything accounted for on the list. And between Friday and Saturday, members of our community came and delivered and moved in everything that Richard would need to have a home. And it's one of the most rewarding things I've done in my life. That we didn't know was possible. We didn't know what we were doing. We're just trying to be helpful members of the community to change something we didn't think was right. And never in our wildest dreams did we think that where we started and where we got to was what could happen. And you asked me, how does it fit in with leadership? I think there's a couple of things we talked about. If there's something you see, and you maybe don't have that full vision and the goal, but you don't want it to be that way. Sometimes that's enough and you just need to start. I don't know what the right decision is, but just take a first step. And then it'll reveal something else on the other side. And we had some failures. And I got 40 no's or more on Places C. And we went back to the group and I'm like, here's what's going on. What other ideas do we have? And then we came up with another idea and we were successful. But I think the other side of it is by posting it on the Facebook group and sharing this journey and asking other people for help, we allowed them to step up and to have an impact. But we also inspired a lot of people in the community, started saying, wow, if you guys can achieve this, I'm starting to think of some other things that we could do in our community and some things that I would like to step up and do. And that for me tells us that we created an impact beyond Richard, but also for our community and inspiring other people to take action on things that they were feeling apathetic about and that they're waiting for someone else to change, that they can play a role in it.
I really, really love that. I think it's a beautiful story. I think I don't know the people in your community, and I'm just so proud that I'm at least able to say that, you're my fellow Canadians. I just think that that's awesome. One thing that really struck home with me when I think about what it is to be a leader and all of the preconceived notions, you should have the answers, you should be firm, stern, or anything like that. Perhaps, coming back to, you mentioned Brene Brown and vulnerability, empathy, and perhaps the most indicative element of that story that screamed leadership to me was when you reached out and said, I want to help and I don't know how. It's hard to say I don't know. And sometimes that needs to happen first because nobody else will venture a suggestion. No one else will say, I don't know. And if you happen to be the person that people will rally around, or if you happen to have a very unique and in-depth level of expertise on a subject, it really comes down to, is that accessible to others? Are you going to be a leader that walks into a room and says, okay, we're meeting about this. This is what we're doing. Or are you going to walk into the room and say, this is the challenge. What do you guys think we should do? And oddly enough, it's the person who doesn't dominate the conversation who's actually displaying true leadership. Because leadership doesn't mean dictatorship. right? It's a very, very different thing. We've got another comment here. Thank you, Andrea, for being so engaged today. Wow, love the Richard story. Imagine the impact if we duplicated that across all our neighborhoods. Leadership begins at home. Well done, Jen and Facebook friends. Your story reflects Kuz's and Posner's leadership traits. Did I say that right?
You did.
That's good.
Thank you, Andrea. Yeah, I'm absolutely blessed to be in the community that I'm in. And I think that it's really about you see something and you do something about it, and you're willing to say, I don't know how. You make me think of a board that I sit on, and we're going through some tough stuff right now. And I've just come in as board chair, and we put together some new board committees. And I was talking with two of the new committee chairs, and they were asking me about my expectations and how the committee should run. And I'm like, I have no idea. We're making it up as we go, and you know as much as I do. And I know that you have the same passion and love for this organization as I do. And you pull me in where I might be able to be helpful, but I don't know any more than you do. We're just going to find our way, all of us together. And I think if I was to say, here's how I want you to do it, because it's what I've made up on the spot, I'd miss out of all the gifts and wisdom that those other board members are going to bring. And the outcome that we get to isn't going to be as good. And maybe we won't be as successful if it's reliant on just one person. But we really are figuring it out as we go.
And, I really think that is a perfect soundbite about why diversity and inclusion is not just a trend, but actually an enormous value. It's not just a buzzword. The fact is, when we bring together different perspectives, different expertise, different experiences, we are more likely to come to a solution that makes sense, that works. I can't help but notice when, I'm a huge process improvement engineering type nerd, but that's not my expertise at all. And oftentimes when I'm trying to solve a problem in marketing and communications, I'll think, well, how would an engineer solve this? I can't find the problem. My husband's an engineer, which is how I learned about all of this stuff. And the 5 whys, digging to your root cause, and principles of efficiency that I would never have thought about in marketing. For example, in a plant, when you design your plant, you don't leave the tops of any equipment flat, or things will stack. People will put stuff there. You make everything on an angle, right? And it's so brilliant, and it solves so many problems in marketing. Like, no, I don't want you to go down that rabbit hole. That's not going to help you. Then don't make it an option, right? And so we actually, I think probably most, if not all, of our problems are already solved if we'll connect with each other and ask. So really interesting stuff. And I really do love that story about your community as well. And I live in a very diverse community, and I'm friendly with everybody, but I do notice that there are little cultural cliques, and I would really love to take that down, because I'm curious. Like, I'm sure everyone's having a good time. I want to know what it looks and feels like, and I want to be invited as an honorary member every now and then. So yeah, it inspires me to want to start a Facebook group for the community. We'll see if that takes off.
Well, so let me know how it goes.
I will. So Jen, if anyone wants to work with you, is inspired by this, wants to talk with you, what's the best way to find you, to reach you?
On LinkedIn. I'm really active on LinkedIn, or on my website at incito.ca.
And that's incito.ca. Correct? Yeah. Yes. I've been getting your emails and enjoying them. Yeah, really enjoying them. I know that it's quite a labor. Well, personally, in my experience, it's quite a labor to make sure that you're providing high quality, meaningful content. And I think you do a great job of that. So thank you.
Thank you. And it's important to me that I'm not just offering my own content and my own voice on a particular subject. So you'll see that I always offer an article or a blog post on the topic, and I always share something from somebody else. Sometimes it's the same perspective, sometimes it's a wildly different perspective, to just contribute to sharing someone else's voice.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love it. Keep doing it. I'm enjoying it. So props. All right, awesome. I think on that note, we both have families that we want to go and cuddle with and wrestle with and have fun with this evening. And I hope all of you do too. I again want to just thank everybody for their eyeballs, their time, your attention. Honestly, I think time is the most valuable thing that we have to give. So thank you for sharing your evenings with us. If you want to connect with me, you can find me online at JT China on Twitter, LinkedIn, jtchina.com, pretty much anywhere. Just Google JT China. It's JTCINA.com, and you'll find me. And yeah, if you want to be on the show, or if you have a topic you'd like us to delve into, please let me know. I'm eager for the feedback. So, Jen?
Thank you. Thank you. This has been an awesome conversation. It's been a delight to see you again. It's been probably a month and a half since we last connected, maybe even 2 months now. So it's been a great conversation, and I really took to heart you introducing me as your friend, and I felt like when we met, we were instant friends. So.
Yeah, that's really special to me too. That's always a bonus. We were getting a thank you from the crowd as well for the masterclass. Oh, so much love. Thank you, Andrea, and yeah, everyone have an awesome Friday night, awesome weekend. You be your smart selves, and we'll see you again here next week, Friday at 7 p.m. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.